Okay, thanks. Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is a multi-locational meeting of the Cabinet, which is held at Penalta House and via Microsoft Teams on Wednesday, the 10th of December, 2025 at 1 p.m. The meeting will be live streamed and a recording made available via the Council's website, except for the discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and audio of those individuals present and or speaking will be publicly available via the recording of the Council on the website www.caerphilly.gov.uk. Okay, the first agenda item is to receive apologies for absence. I know we have apologies from Councillor Forehead and Councillor George. Are there any other apologies?
Just apology from Rob Hartshorn, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Okay then. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and or prejudicial interests in respect of any item of business on the agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Can I ask for declarations of interest, first of all? Carol?
Thanks, Leader. I've got a personal interest in item 7 as my father is a council tenant. Thank you.
Amanda?
Thank you. A personal interest at item number 7 as a contract holder of Caerphilly Council.
And Leonard?
Again, number 7, my brother-in-law rents a garage.
Okay, Rob? Those noted? Oh, sorry, Councillor Leonard?
Yeah, I also have a personal interest as I have a relative who rents a garage.
That's item number 7 as well. Okay, go on.
So, thanks, Leader, and thanks, members. So you've declared personal interest there, I think, appropriately. So, because they're personal interests only, you can remain in the chamber, take a full part in the debate and vote. Okay, just to... if members have got any other interests that they can think of as we go through the agenda, just please speak up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shane, Councillor Shane Cook, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just to mention, I have a distant relative that also rents a council property. It's a distant relative, so I don't know if it's a personal interest, really.
Yeah, entirely a matter for you, Councillor Cook. When you say distant, the code talks about a close person associate. Doesn't strike me as being that way. And if that is the case, there's no need to declare, but entirely up to you.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, thanks for that all. Those interests have been noted. Okay, item number 3, the Cabinet, which was held on the 12th of November 2025. I just go through them page by page. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Somebody prepared to move? Councillor Leonard?
Move.
Anybody prepared to second? Yeah. Councillor Stenner? Show of hands. All okay? Thank you. Item number 4 is to note the Cabinet Forward Work Programme, pages 9 to 14. Is there anything that we need to raise in terms of the Cabinet Forward Work Programme? Anything to add or to dispute? Or everything okay? Show of hands then. All okay? That's fine. Okay then, we move on to our first substantive item on the agenda, and that's the development of specialist additional learning provision for children with additional learning needs. And that's Councillor Carol Andrews.
Thank you, Leader. So the purpose of the report today is to request Cabinet members to make a decision as to whether or not to implement the proposal to develop additional learning provision known as specialist resource bases. Further to Cabinet approval on the 17th of September this year, a statutory notice in respect of the consultation regarding the development of additional learning provision was published, and the formal objection period ran between the 22nd of September and the 19th of October this year. Under Section 49 of the School Standards and Organisation Wales Act 2013, when objections have been received, proposers must publish a summary of the statutory objections and the proposer's response to those objections in the objection report. 2 objections were received via email and in the medium of English. To discharge the county's duty under the School Organisation Code 2018, there is now a requirement for Cabinet members to give due regard to the content of the objection report and make a final determination as to whether to implement the proposal as outlined in the report. Should Cabinet authorise progression of the project, a decision letter will be published setting out clearly the reasons for the decision with reference to the School Organisation Code 2018. The proposal will then progress to full implementation as outlined in the report. Implementation across the 5 sites will be implemented in a phased manner as outlined in the consultation document, with an anticipated effective date at all sites being no later than the 31st of May 2026, apart from the second secondary class proposed for Idris Davis 3-18 school. All the provisions will be managed by the head teacher and the governing body of the schools on behalf of the local authority. Admission for children whose needs require such additional learning provision is the responsibility of the local authority, who is the decision maker. This will be facilitated through the local authority additional learning needs panel. The recommendation in 3.1 asks Cabinet members to endorse the recommendation to proceed to implementation of the proposal for the development of specialist additional learning provision for children with additional learning needs in the form of resource bases across the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews, for that introduction. Councillor Chris Morgan to second.
Thank you, Leader. Quite happy to second it. I got a question. Is it okay to?
Of course, by the way.
Okay. Can officers please explain a little more about the 2 objections that were received, please?
Okay.
I can just refer you to the report 10.3 and 10.4, but just to expand on that, we had 2 objections. They were both exactly the same, and they both referred to a misunderstanding around whether or not the provision was being developed for pupils within the school or whether or not it was provision for pupils across the local authority. And obviously the consultation report outlines very clearly that this is provision for children across the whole of the local authority, as just explained by Councillor Andrews. The other element of the objection was that there was a strong sense of provision therefore being taken away from children at the school and provided for children across the local authority. Really important to highlight that the schools that we chose for the provision, working with the head teachers, were schools with surplus places, and therefore we are not impacting on the provision for children who attend those schools presently.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Leonard.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Have these objections now been satisfied? Thank you.
We had a responsibility to respond, which we did, and we haven't had any further feedback.
Okay. Any further questions? No, I mean, just a comment then from me, or a couple of comments. Ysgol Gyfun Cymrymni, Idris Davis, Rooster Dafydd, St Helens Primary, Hengoed Primary School. A good spread across the borough is what this council does. Invest in ALN. I'd like to thank officers for their hard work, working with the teachers and making sure that we do get this investment. It's a very positive development, very good news story. And I'd just like to thank everybody for playing their part in supporting children with additional learning needs. It's much appreciated. Thank you very much. Okay, the recommendations are in 3.1. They've been read out. We'll therefore go to the vote, Rob.
Certainly, Leader. Members, if you could please vote on the poll list before you any moment on the single recommendation within the report. Please. And that's been unanimously approved, Leader. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Okay, agenda item 6, that's the additional support delegation. And again, that's Councillor Carol Andrews.
Thank you, Leader. A priority for the Education Service is ensuring compliance with the Additional Learning Needs and Education Tribunal Wales Act 2018 and the associated code, ensuring that statutory duties for pupils with additional learning needs are met. The Additional Learning Needs and Education Tribunal Wales Act 2018 provided an ideal opportunity for the additional support allocation process to be refreshed. Estyn has recognised the good practice in additional learning needs within the local authority and schools. However, Estyn, in the local authority inspection report, has endorsed the need for this work to be completed. In Caerphilly, funding for the additional support for schools has historically been retained centrally. The budget for additional support is currently £6.7 million. This includes the employment of centrally employed teaching assistants. Schools utilise the funding to support them to undertake the responsibility for developing additional learning needs provision and ensuring children's needs are met. A working group with local authority officers and head teachers from primary and secondary schools was re-established in order to take this work forward. Local authority officers identified the need to increase the funding in this area, thus demonstrating a recognition of the concerns raised by schools. The head teachers in the working group agreed an approach that was shared more broadly with all head teachers, subject to further discussions and the required consultation process. Local authority officers have worked with schools to share the proposed models for delegation and to address any barriers to delegation. Should there be a cabinet agreement today to delegate the additional support to schools, local authority officers would be enabled to work differently with schools to review existing principles and practices, support the leadership of additional learning needs in schools, model and scaffold approaches, and ensure the ongoing collaborative approach to inclusion and additional learning needs. The local authority will establish an executive consultation group with head teachers and local authority officers to meet monthly to review key decisions and changes. There is a commitment to review the formula for delegation every 2 years and to ensure that Welsh Government grants are maximised to support additional learning needs in schools. So the recommendations in 3.1 ask Cabinet members to endorse the recommendation to proceed with the delegation of additional support to schools through a preferred option and consider whether to endorse a preferred option from the options set out in 5.10 of this report. I move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. And the second is Councillor Amanda McConnell.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to second this report, but before I do so, I do have one question. Will head teachers still receive the support of local authority officers if they are in a tribunal situation? Thanks.
Sarah?
Thank you for your question. Again, I'd refer you to 10.3 in the report, but to expand, what we recognise is that when the ALN panel process is revised, as it will be if this is agreed, officers will have more time to work directly in schools to support. So that standing shoulder to shoulder, if you like, with head teachers in very challenging situations will only be enhanced in this situation.
Okay. Any further questions? No? Okay then. In that case then, Rob, we'll go to the recommendations. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just as a point of clarification for members of the public watching this, Leader, it might be useful just to say what option that the Cabinet is going to endorse, what his preferred option is.
Of course. Carol?
Yeah, I think it's option 3.
So, members, thank you, Deputy Leader. So, members, you are voting on the 2 recommendations within the report, and the preferred option is identified as option 3. Thank you. And those recommendations are unanimously approved. Thank you.
Okay, before anybody moves out of their seats, I'd like to bring Councillor Andrews in, who's got something to say.
Thank you, Leader. Sorry, Sarah. I know that this is your last Cabinet meeting, and I would like to congratulate you on your retirement and wish you a very long and happy retirement. And thank you for your almost 28 years of service with the authority. And I understand 8 of those years have been in a leadership role. So thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Carol. Not expected at all, but thank you, everyone. And what a lovely way to end the last Cabinet. So thank you for all your support. It's very much appreciated. And I know my colleagues are going to do an amazing job in taking this work forward. So thank you.
Well deserved. Okay. On with item number 7 then. It's the Housing Revenue Account Charges 2026 to 27. And to introduce this is Councillor Shane Cook.
Thank you, Leader. Members, you'll be aware that the Housing Revenue Account is quite separate to the General Fund budget and council tax. The HRA is funded by rental income received from council contract holders rather than the council taxpayer. The recommendation in the report requests rent increases per property to the maximum permit as per the Welsh Government rent policy, which is 4.3%. This will increase the current average gross rent by £4.70 per week from £109.34 to £114.04 per week over 52 weeks, and increase the level of rent of garages from April 2026 by 4.3% from £9.69 per week to £10.11 per week, an increase of 42p per week. Also, to seek approval from Welsh Government to remove Tregeaga Court from Caerphilly Homes rent debit account to facilitate a potential change of use for a different purpose other than sheltered housing provision. Rent increases are necessary to maintain a required level of service to our council tenants. Inflationary increases are experienced annually on the cost to manage and maintain the housing service, the Housing Revenue Account, which cannot legitimately set a deficit budget. Therefore, rental charges need to rise to meet inflationary demands. Any loss of additional income from not increasing the rent is likely to result in reduced resources being available to effectively manage and maintain the housing stock, impacting on service delivery. Under the current rent policy, any rent increase is applied equally to all stock, irrelevant of location or property type. Affordability also must be considered. Our current rent is one of the lowest rents across all the Welsh local housing authorities, and we estimate that with a 4.3% rent rise, our position for 2025-26 would remain the lowest quartile. Further modelling has also been carried out under the Joseph Rowntree Foundation affordability model, which has continued to show favourably against our rent levels after applying a 4.3% increase. With the latest calculations showing 100% of our stock is lower than the JRF model by an average of 23% if 4.3% rent increase applied. Housing benefit and universal credit will cover the increased cost of the rent charge in this report for approximately 80% of our tenants, up to the housing benefit limitation rate. The recommendations were approved unanimously by cross-party members at last night's Housing and Environment Scrutiny Committee. Therefore, Leader, can I move the recommendations of 3, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Philippa Leonard.
Yeah, I'd like to second that report, and I also have a question. In relation to rent arrears, how are we helping to support the contract holders who are struggling with the cost of living crisis and rising inflation? Thank you.
Nick?
Thanks, Councillor. The way that the team's set up is that it's split between tenancy sustainment, tenancy support, and rent recovery. We've been living through a cost of living crisis for some time now and still experiencing that. And so we're trying to ensure that there's a balance between making sure we get the necessary revenue income, but making sure that we're not putting our residents at any greater risk in terms of suffering more in the cost of living crisis. The way that universal credit has been rolled out and the transition to that is different to housing benefit. And one of the issues that we've picked up actually is that there's some inequality there within the way that the universal credit and housing benefits worked out. And so there's a weak as housing benefit is paid over 53 weeks and universal credit would only be paid over 52 weeks. And so there's a gap there. So we identified that and didn't want to put our tenants in any worse financial position. So we recognised there was some reserves within the HRA, and we made a small fund available for those tenants to make a request for that fund. And so that's helped out 568 contract holders over the recent period with what we've called a hardship payment to address that, totaling on just under £70,000 as one of our attempts to address some of that inequality as the benefit system changes. Just one example of how we're trying to support our tenants through the cost of living crisis.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Philippa. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Leader. Clearly, 80% of our current contract holders are covered by housing benefit. What would be the impact of the rent rise on the 20% self-payers?
Thanks, Councillor Morgan. Well, the impact is that, as you've said, that they are self-payers and therefore that increase has to be borne by them. But I think it's important to point out that they're not eligible for benefit, and assuming they have a level of income, looking at the alternative to benefiting from some of our affordable housing we offer, as they are eligible but self-payers. The alternative to that is private rental, and we'll see that private rents have increased by 7.3% as of August this year's stats, and we're obviously looking at a 4.3% increase, and that's the kind of the benefit there that's afforded. And if you look at the average rental per month and per week in the private sector at the moment, against £114 a week, which will be the new rent, and the current kind of average, and this is an average because some parts of the county borough will be far higher, but the average weekly rent is around £164. And when you look at gross pay, a self-payer within our property would be spending about 17% of their income on rent. Whereas if you were paying in the private market, you'd be paying 24% of your income on rent. So there's still a benefit to those who are self-payers within our properties as opposed to the private market.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Marcus.
Just to add on to that question, I think I believe we're in the lower quartile of comparable authorities in Wales. So it is extremely low rate that we've got for rent for the housing stock.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. I think we're the third lowest of the local authorities across Wales, as Councillor Cook pointed out in the intro. So it still is a significantly affordable rent, even if you are self-paying.
Yep. Thanks, Nick. Yes, as Councillor Cook has said, this went through scrutiny unanimously last night. I think there was recognition from at least one of the members there that our proposed increase of 4.3% is significantly less than the private sector. And interestingly, looking at the wage growth figures recently, it's looking as though it's about 4.5% to 4.8% for wages going up. So it's clearly not above the rate of wages, and it's a very low increase compared to perhaps other authorities, as we're in the bottom quartile. So yeah, there seems to be a lot of support behind the proposed increase. Without any further questions, Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add that, as you've mentioned, that it did go to scrutiny committee last night. The report was unanimously supported. There were a number of questions very similar to what's been asked in the chamber this morning. And it is obviously something that is supported by scrutiny.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, we'll go to the vote then, Rob.
Thanks, Leader. Members, please could you vote on the two recommendations within the report on the poll that's before you any moment. Thank you. And those recommendations are unanimously approved. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Okay then, agenda item 8, That's the Self-Assessment Report 2024 to 25. To introduce this, Councillor Eleni Stenner.
Thank you, Leader. Self-assessment report is a statutory requirement under the Local Government and Elections Act. The intention of the Local Government and Elections Act is for councils to be proactive in keeping their performance under review and to consider whether organisational processes and procedures are as effective as they could be or whether they could be improved to drive better outcomes. Under the Act, we have a duty to keep performance under review, and the extent to which we were fulfilling those performance requirements, which are exercising our functions effectively, using our resources economically, efficiently and effectively, have effective governance in place for securing the above. The Council is required to assess its own performance and provide the public with a balanced picture of that performance. The self-assessment report considers how well the Council has operated throughout the financial year 24-25. The report is structured around a range of corporate functions. A robust and thorough internal review of activity and impact is undertaken across those areas to form a summary judgment using the scale as outlined in paragraph 5.9. A number of additional health checks are also undertaken to provide further insight and assurance. This report was considered by Governance and Audit Committee on the 13th of November as part of the statutory duty to gain assurance that the Council's self-assessment process is robust and effective. The recommendation is at 3.1 and Cabinet is asked to approve the self-assessment report as a final position on organisational performance for 24-25. I move.
Thank you, Eleni. And to second is Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, I'm happy to second, Leader, but I've also got a question.
Yep.
Okay. What are we doing to move the adequate and effective ratings into the next assessment bracket? Thank you.
Okay, Sue?
Thanks, Councillor Andrews. As you quite rightly said, there's a judgment for each of the activities. At the end of the financial year, officers look at those the ratings. We then develop a robust action plan, looking at what we need to do as a team to move that up the next level. So there's an action plan for each of those areas, Councillor Andrews, just to reassure you.
Okay. No further questions, I don't think. Okay, in that case, Rob, we'll go to the vote. Thanks.
Thanks, Leader. Members, could you please vote on approving the self-assessment report for 24-25, please? And that recommendation is unanimously approved. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Okay then, agenda item 9, that's the Wellbeing Objectives Report 24-25. And again, that's Councillor Eleni Stenner.
Thank you. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Act 2015 requires all public bodies to set wellbeing objectives to improve the social, economic and environmental wellbeing of their area and to report on the progress they have made in meeting their wellbeing objectives for the preceding financial year. This report presents the annual Wellbeing Objective Report shown at Appendix 1, outlining the progress made by the Council in achieving its wellbeing objectives for the 24-25 year. These objectives are contained within the Corporate Plan 2023 to 2028. Each objective is underpinned by several outcomes, a chosen set of priority measures and a range of steps. To enable a judgment of success, each objective has been given summary judgment based on progress made during 24-25 using the scale as outlined in paragraph 5.5. The Wellbeing Objective Report for 24-25 provides a platform to celebrate activity that has gone well, to reflect on the areas that needs to be improved and to identify new approaches and interventions to support future progress of the wellbeing objectives contained within the corporate plan. This report was presented to joint scrutiny on the 1st of December, where it was well debated. Recommendation is at 3.1 that Cabinet approve the Wellbeing Objective Report as a final position on performance against wellbeing objectives for 24-25. I move.
Thank you, Eleni, for that. Councillor Philippa Leonard to second.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to second the report. I also have a question. Are officers content that we have engaged with all stakeholders and there are no gaps?
We've engaged with all relevant stakeholders throughout the development of the wellbeing objectives and the relevant action plan. However, there's always room for improvement, and I think recognising that is important. Our recent panel performance assessment, whilst recognising the excellent work in this area, comms and engagement, I've challenged the council on further improvement. So we will be looking to further improve our engagement, and wellbeing objectives will be one of the areas we'll be looking at. Thank you.
No further questions? No? Oh, Ed, go on.
Not so much a question, Leader, but I think often when these reports come in front of members, it's easy to think that not a lot of work has gone on in the background, specifically in terms of pulling the report together. But I think the other important thing here is these are the objectives that this administration has set for the 5-year term, and it would be remiss of me not to point out how strong a performance those indicators within this report give. We are doing significantly well against an awful lot of challenging areas that you set us. And I think sometimes it's lost, isn't it? We tend to focus on the things we're not doing or not achieving. But if you read down the performance indicators in the back of this report, you'll get a really, really strong sense of just how far we've come with the challenges we're facing as well. And I think it's important just to keep that on record. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, Ed. I agree. No further questions or comments then. So in that case, Rob, we'll go to the vote. Thanks.
Thanks, Leader. Members, please vote on the recommendation to publish the report for 24-25. And that recommendation is unanimously approved.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Agenda item 10, Treasury Management and Capital Financing Prudential Indicators Quarter 2 Monitoring Report, 1st of April 2025 to 30th of September 2025. There we are. And then it's...
Thank you, Leader. So this report presents Cabinet with details of Treasury management activities and capital financing together with the related prudential indicators for the period the 1st of April 25 to the 30th of September 25 to review the Treasury management strategy for 25-26 as set out in the annual investment strategy and capital financing prudential indicators report. Under the provisions of the Local Government Act 2003, the authority is obliged to approve and publish a number of indicators relevant to capital finance and treasury management. The capital strategy for 25-26 was submitted to full council on the 27th of February 25. The authority's annual treasury strategy and capital financing prudential indicators for 25-26 were also approved by Council on the 27th of February 25. The recommendations are shown at 3.1 of the report, and Cabinet are asked to note the contents of this report.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Councillor Amanda McConnell to second.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to second this report, but I also have a question. Our fall in interest rates impacting on our treasury management, please.
Thank you. So ultimately it means that we'd get a lower return from our investments, but for 25-26 we're not currently forecasting an impact. We are reporting online for our interest receivable budget. That's because we were anticipating this drop in interest rates in our forecasting, and so the budget was reduced from last year to this year. We are also taking actions to mitigate this, so we do have some longer term investments where we can get higher returns, but once again it just makes you realise how important it is that we have a well profiled capital programme.
Okay, no further questions, but the report is just for noting, so there's no formal vote to take place on this, but unless there's any further questions, then that's been duly noted. Okay. Okay, agenda item 11, that's the 2025 to 26 capital budget monitoring report quarter 2. And that's Councillor Leonard Stanner again.
Thank you once again, Leader. This report provides details of projected capital expenditure for 25-26 financial year and to advise of the forecast variance. Projected and actual capital expenditure is shown with information available as of the 30th of September 25, which is period 6 of the 25-26 financial year. The recommendations are shown at 3.1.2 to 3.1.5 of the report, and these are: Cabinet is asked to note the content of the report, support the posing of the Sustainable Communities for Learning programmes where projects have not progressed to full business case submission to Welsh Government, in order that a working group can be established to review falling pupil numbers and subsequent budget pressures in schools. The group will include scrutiny members. Approve an allocation of £63,000 from capital contingency funding for Trinity Fields School. Approve an allocation of £238,000 from the capital contingency for Llanfabon Primary School. Approve that the amount received by the Council in settlement of long-standing civil litigation claim is allocated to Fleet for purchases. I move.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stenner, and I believe it's Councillor Shane Cook to second.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second. But I have a question, if that's okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. This report demonstrates the Council's commitment to provide improvements across the whole borough through capital projects such as the Caerphilly Wellbeing Centre, Respite Centre and flood risk management schemes. I was just wondering how we have managed the impact of inflation and material costs pressures on our capital projects.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Leanne?
Thank you. So yes, we are seeing tenders that are returning significantly higher than we originally budgeted for, which is also having an impact on the projects we're able to deliver. To manage this, we are reviewing project scopes. We do cost engineering to try and redesign elements and bring them back into budget. And we also go out and we seek additional funding, but ultimately we do have to reprioritise and repurpose. We can only deliver so much.
Thank you, Leanne. Is that okay, Councillor Cook? Okay. Any further questions? No? Okay. In that case then, Rob, we will go to the vote. Thanks.
Thanks, Leader. Members, if you could vote on the 5 recommendations within the report on the poll before you any moment, please. And the recommendations are unanimously approved. Thanks, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Agenda item 12, Whole Authority Revenue Budget Monitoring Report Quarter 2. And this is for the last time, I think, in terms of introducing a report anyway, is Councillor Stenner. Until next Cabinet, probably.
Thank you, Leader. This report provides details to Cabinet of the projected whole authority revenue budget expenditure for 25-26 financial year as of the 30th of September 25. This report provides details of the 25-26 projected revenue budget position based on information available as of the 30th of September 25. Details are also provided throughout the report on the more significant variations against budget. The recommendations are shown at 3.1 of the report, and it is recommended that Cabinet notes the contents of the report and approves the repurposing of earmarked reserve balances set out in Appendix 3, approve the budget variants listed in Appendix 4 to capture and crystallise the savings against the 25-26 in-year transformation savings target of £5.3 million, approve a variant of £409,000 from miscellaneous finance to the home to school transport budget to mitigate the overspend detailed in paragraph 5.2.5, approve the utilisation of an in-year underspend against the individual school's budget to fund cost pressures linked to the closure of Rudbury Primary School and Lewis Girls Schools in July 2025 as detailed in 5.2.3 of the report. The reasons for recommendations are to ensure the Cabinet is aware of the projected revenue budget outturn position for the 25-26 financial year. I move.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stenner. And the second is Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second, but I've also got a question. What will the utilisation of an underspend against the individual school budgets actually mean, please? Thank you.
Thank you. So when we set the budget, we estimate the school's funding requirements. We then allocate that out, and because of changes with pupil numbers and timelines on pressures like the special resource bases and other pressures, that has resulted in an underspend. But this one-off use of the underspend will have no impact on the school's budgets.
Okay, thanks, Leanne. Any further questions? No? No. In that case then, Rob, we'll go to the vote, please.
Thanks, Leader. Members, could you please vote on the 5 recommendations within the report you've just heard? And those recommendations are unanimously approved.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Our penultimate report, agenda item 13, is the Public Space Protection Orders, Antisocial Behaviour and Drinking Alcohol in a Public Place report, and that is Councillor Philippa Leonard to introduce, please.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of the report is to seek Cabinet approval to renew existing public space protection orders for antisocial behaviour and alcohol-related issues for 3 years. PSPOs were introduced under the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014, which allow local authorities to impose restrictions in public spaces to prevent antisocial behaviour and ensure safe, enjoyable environments for the public. Existing PSPOs have been effective over the past 3 years, enabling early intervention, education and enforcement through patrols and fixed penalty notices. Public consultation for the renewal of the PSPOs have been widely promoted via council website, social media and direct emails to stakeholders, for example, Gwent Police, Crime Commissioner and community safety partners. The key findings of the public consultation are there were 61 responses to the consultation, 77% of respondents were local residents, and over 90% of those who responded supported extending the PSPOs for a further 3 years. In terms of the current PSPO coverage, the following areas within the borough are covered. That's bus stations and transport hubs, in particular Caerphilly, Blackwood, Bargoed and Nelson bus stations and Caerphilly train station. Bus shelters and bus stops throughout the borough, these were introduced in 2017 and these sheltered areas remain hotspots for gatherings and antisocial behaviour. Alcohol restrictions, there are 31 areas and 280 locations within the borough where it is an offence to continue drinking after being asked to stop by an officer authorised to enforce the PSPO. The PSPO will ensure officers can take action for the following matters, which are disorderly, indecent or offensive behaviour, consumption of alcohol where asked and when and where asked not to do so, damage, graffiti, littering or deliberate fires, obstruction of authorised officers, possession of off-road vehicles and not providing your name or address when requested by an authorised officer. PSPOs are a proven tool for reducing antisocial behaviour and crime. Non-renewal could lead to increased antisocial behaviour and reduced enforcement capability. Renewing these orders will assist authorised officers in targeting the antisocial behaviour which occurs across our borough. Renewal of the PSPO aligns with our Cabinet priorities and will aid authorised officers in undertaking their duties. I therefore move the recommendations set out in 3.1 and 3.2 of the report that Cabinet agree to renew the PSPOs for antisocial behaviour and alcohol for a period of 3 years and to delegate the making of the orders to the Executive Director of Housing and Environment in consultation with a relevant Cabinet member. Thank you.
Okay, and to second the report, I think it's Councillor Chris Morgan.
Thank you, Leader. I've also got a question, if that's
Yeah, of
okay.
course, yeah.
If a resident or somebody visiting the borough breaches a PSPO, what happens if they cannot afford to pay a fixed penalty notice, and will they have the ability to appeal the decision?
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Morgan, for the question. In short, yes, there is an appeals process that's set out as part of the fixed penalty notice when it's issued to them. In the case where somebody is having difficulty paying, they're encouraged to reach out to us, and we will work with them to ensure that we are able to recover those costs in an appropriate manner, whether it's via a payment plan of some description.
Councillor Leonard?
Yeah, can officers tell me what happens if an underage person breaches the PSPO or a vulnerable person? Can you tell me what happens then, please?
Okay.
Hi, yes, I'll answer that one for you. So in respect of anyone who's underage, we have an agreement with our Youth Offending Service that person is referred direct to them, so they engage in an intervention programme where they gather education on why it is an issue, that behaviour is an issue, and how to deter from behaving in that manner again. Was there a secondary to that question?
Yeah, and a vulnerable person. What happens if a vulnerable person...
So officers are highly trained on managing vulnerable persons, and they will always look at capacity. But our first measure in respect of enforcement is always to look at engaging with that person and offering education. It is not a first term to always go for enforcement. So in those situations, we will always advocate for our officers to always engage with that person, offer the education, and try to deter from that behaviour moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't have a question before, but just an off-the-cuff question. I mean, perception and reality. I'm trying to thinking about here. Obviously, say for instance, a area could be perceived as a problematic area, and it may not qualify for a PSPO. And conversely, the other way around as well, it could be an area where there's been notable trouble, but then it's eased so that it doesn't have a PSPO. But in terms of the first point, how do we combat the sort of perception versus reality of an area then in lack of a PSPO?
So you are correct, that is an ongoing issue. I think some areas do have an issue with perception of ongoing crime and disorder. In those situations, we work really closely with our partners, agencies, especially Gwent Police, to go out and do a lot of community engagement, offering additional patrols, support via our tasking service, and officers making sure they're visible and there's open lines of communications with those members of the public. If an area is identified to be problematic and needs that focal point from us within community safety, we will always advocate to people to come forward, provide us with evidence, and we can inform them on the routes they need to take for us to document those issues, so we can then look at what tools and powers are available to us to be able to support further measures in the future.
Okay, yeah. That's great. Any further questions? No? All good? Okay then, Rob, we'll go to the recommendations. Thanks.
Thanks, Leader. Members, please vote on the 2 recommendations contained within the report. Is someone having... there we are. And the recommendations are unanimously approved. Thank you.
Somebody didn't know whether to slow on the uptake. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Rob. Our last item on the agenda. I'll take this in the absence of Councillor George. It's the A469 Troyd Ruvuk. Okay. The purpose of this report is to provide Cabinet with an update on both funding status and project progress for the remediation of the A469 at Troyd Ruvuk, and to seek Cabinet approval for the proposed funding to deliver essential construction works that will restore long-term resilience to a key part of the strategic highway network. The A469 between Utradiga and Pontlottin forms part of the County Borough's strategic highway network. It links the A465 trunk road to the north of the A4049 strategic highway to the south and is a main arterial link providing safe, efficient access for residents, schools, businesses, buses and timely response times for emergency vehicles. The highway supports a Welsh water main supply, an 11 kV power supply together with the other services, and the area in question also includes the Rhymney Valley Rail Line. In recent years, Welsh Government funding has enabled the Council to appoint specialist consultants to undertake the series of ground investigation, geotechnical analysis, and design elements outlined within the report. This work has helped us understand the complex issues causing deterioration on the A469 and to advance design solutions for intended remediation works. Delivery of a scheme will reduce future dangerous driving conditions occurring, meaning road users have uninterrupted journey times and better connectivity, reinstating full access to the communities in the north of the borough. If a scheme is not carried out, then there are continued risks to all road users, with the ongoing sporadic closures causing significant disruption to the highway user and network where roads are closed off and traffic diverted. Furthermore, deterioration is likely to be accelerated, meaning defects will also occur on the carriageway surface, in turn creating more repairs, costs and delays for carriageway reconstruction. If no action is taken, the road is likely to deteriorate, resulting in long-term closure of the A469. A catastrophic slip poses risks to life and property and will cut off water supplies to communities, which can affect everyday life and impact schools, businesses and residents alike. It is recommended that a combination of capital reserves be utilised to fund the project as outlined in 3.1.4, and it is recommended that Cabinet endorse a recommendation to Council to fund 10.830 million from borrowing. This allows for a 10% contingency of 2 million, delegated approval to the Executive Director of Environment and Housing and the Director of Financial Services and Section 151 Officer in consultation with the relevant Cabinet member should the tender exceed the budget estimate. I therefore move the recommendation. And to second is Councillor Stenner.
Thank you, Leader. I'm delighted to second the proposal for this report, which seeks to rectify the ongoing problems at the A469 at Trudivouch. As a local ward member, this is one of a few things that keep me awake at night, and it has done for many years. This is the only road which provides direct access to the local secondary school, which serves my ward and the heads of the valley. The report shows this council's commitment to the north of the borough. Residents very often feel neglected and forgotten about. However, this is a report that shows that this isn't the case, and this council will continue to strive to ensure the safety of residents while travelling this route. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Councillor Andrews.
Thanks, Leader. Just a question. Are we continuing to engage with Welsh Government to come to the funding table, please? Thank you.
Okay, Clive or Marcus?
Happy to take it, Chair. Yes, we are certainly continuing to engage with Welsh Government on all fronts, both directly to the Cabinet Secretary and to the officials and through the CCR as well, to see if there are opportunities through the new administration of future transport grants from next year. And we'll continue to push that throughout the duration of the scheme to minimise the ask of the authority.
Thank you, Clive. Any further questions? Well, in summing up, I think the words of Councillor Stenner really, I don't have to add more to it, only to say it is a political imperative of the administration. I agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Stenner has said in terms of the residents in the north of the borough will only believe the work is happening when it does happen. I've seen the Facebook comments. I've seen the general opinion. I accept it fully. The residents have been waiting there for a very, very long time. We've engaged with Welsh Government. We haven't got what we wanted out of Welsh Government. We are determined as this administration to push ahead to make sure the people of the Upper Rhymney Valley are well served by this administration. And I suppose my first job as leader of the council is to give that assurance to the residents up there. We will do it. The money is there. We will see it through, and we are looking forward to the works taking place. And it's a pleasure to introduce the report and to hear the comments from officers and from Cabinet here today. So without further ado, Rob, we'll go to the vote. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. So, members, you're voting on the 5 recommendations within the report. The 5th recommendation, don't forget, is an endorsement of a decision which will have to be made by Council. So this report will go to our next Council meeting in January, and that will be to look at this question of borrowing. So without further ado, members, if you could please cast your vote on the 5 recommendations within the report. And those recommendations are unanimously approved. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Rob. 14 items down, none to go. Thank you, Cabinet. Thank you, officers. Can I therefore bring Cabinet now to a close? Thank you.